Right. You can go now.
So my name is David Dunn.
What's the name of the course?
The course is SVC Social Care.
Okay. And when were you diagnosed with autism?
I wasn't. I'm self-diagnosed. So at the moment, that's a hot topic in the autistic community. It's pretty much divided the community. So roughly about 50% feel that it's kind of like a get out, kind of like an easy exit, like a cop out, basically. If you're not diagnosed, then you shouldn't really be claiming to be diagnosed, or you shouldn't really identify as autistic. And I think that's an argument rooted in ignorance. One of the subjects that we study in depth is autism, for several modules on this course. It's easy to say don't identify as autistic if you haven't been diagnosed, but the reality is that, so I'm 49, I'm Generation X, born in 77. I didn't know about autism when I was a teenager, so that would have been the early 90s. I only really knew about autism in the following decade, and even then I wasn't sure. Psychiatrists will not, at least on the public level, they will not offer diagnosis to adults. So if you're 18 plus, then you've fallen out of their bracket. On a private level, psychiatrists will offer diagnosis, but you pay a premium. You're talking about several grand to be diagnosed, and I just don't have it. I just don't have that kind of money. So I identify as autistic because I exhibit several traits that chime with that disorder.
Right. What are those traits then?
So I find it difficult to enter into crowded rooms. I tend to pay a lot of attention. I have an eye for detail. That's a key trait with autism. If I have to enter a crowded room, I'll always wear headphones. In fact, most of the time, if I'm in this canteen or in the library, I'm wearing headphones. And that serves a dual purpose. For noise cancellation, but also I want to listen to music, or I want to listen to a podcast, But ultimately, I don't have to hear what's going on around me. And if I don't have to hear what's going on around me, then I can sort of feel a sense of peace. Or I tend to kind of feel overwhelmed,
And then when you get overwhelmed, then how do you manage that? When you go home and after college, and like what helps you relax? TV, music.
Music, yeah, music, or reading something that I'm interested in. Mainly music, or just silence. Just empty space and silence. They help. It's kind of like it's a learned experience because when I was a teenager, I didn't really know how to cope. I didn't really know how to cope with the autism. I didn't really know how to cope with silence. I kind of wanted to be involved in everything. I wanted to be involved. I wanted to be in those crowded spaces. And I didn't understand why I was being excluded. You know, there is a great deal of stigma there.
And then just with the college, have you found it mostly positive or challenging, or kind of a bit of both? With the course?
Mostly negative.
Okay. Do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, so I have 6 lecturers, and one of the lecturers I have for 4 modules. And so I've been here since September of last year. And pretty early on, it was established that this lecture was a ball breaker. She didn't take any prisoners, and that's fine. I can deal with that. But then, if I have to deal with that, then I also will be a ball breaker. You know, that's how I deal with things. But ultimately, on 3 separate occasions, with myself and 2 other students, she publicly humiliated us. So me personally, she'd said, so she invites a question, you know, she invites a Q&A, and she would say, any questions, anyone? And I asked the question. It wasn't, you know, which do you think would win, a dinosaur or a house? It was a question relevant to the material, the study material. And she said, David, I have no time for stupid questions. And I felt that was unnecessary. So then shortly around that time, I think it was just after, we had to hand in, we had a deadline for a project. And she didn't give feedback for half of that assignment for me. I'd missed the day because I had to attend the graduation. And so I think in the day I missed, she gave feedback to everyone. Didn't give it to me. And so I handed up that assignment. I got a poor grade, passed, but it wasn't what I would hope for. I'd also struggled with the Halloween night time. So one key trait also is that I don't tend to deal with disruption when it comes to routine. I rely on routine. And the Halloween break came up. I had this deadline. Because there was a disruption, even though the assignment was finished, I missed the deadline. And so she marked me down because of that, even though I made it clear that I was struggling over the break. She marked me down because of that. And then to compound that issue, she put up my poor grades up on screen for everyone to see. And I thought that was unnecessary. So I started to ignore her, and she would address me in class, and I would ignore her. So then she took me outside. We had a chat about it. She said I was unstable. Then she issued me a warning, but then at the same time she issued an apology. And I was like, listen, if you're going to issue an apology, show some humility. Because if you're sorry, then there shouldn't be a warning. You know, it's one or the other. That's my position. So yeah, I mean, it went up as far as the principal. The principal made it clear that they were taking her side. You know, but I'm not the only incident there. There was another case where there was actually two cases where two other students in the class, both are immigrants, were humiliated. I think they felt like they couldn't proceed in complaining because they were immigrants. But ultimately, she's a very recognised, established faculty member, so she gets away with it. You know.
Okay. And then, do you have to do any kind of presentations or group work? How do you find that then after what you just told me?
So, I mean, I have a degree. I've done presentations before at degree level. It's always a problem. It's always something that causes a great deal of stress. You have to do a presentation just a few days ago, and I tend to kind of rehearse. This is something that autistic people tend to do. They even if they're in a debate, or if they're getting ready to confront someone, they will rehearse beforehand, so that they can ensure that they come across as coherent. And in fact, I rehearsed this, because I wanted to come across as coherent. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, it's always something that will cause stress for me personally. But I tend to manage it well. Yeah.
And then, just lastly, then, what are your strengths?
So, as I said, I tend to focus. I tend to have a great eye for detail. I hyper focus on things.